to kill screen, they have a good idea of what it is that they're getting. I mean, again, to Chelsea's point, when we get so much stuff, so like jargon, just like cut that out. If it says like JRPG, fantasy, well, even if that's actually what it is, like those are words that you are using that you're wasting words in the subject line that could be used for something that's really interesting. And if that's where you're starting, I mean, I feel like a lot of these decisions, unfortunately, are probably like made at the moment the game's like started, right? So if you start making a game saying, I mean, I think it's really important to understand like who your competition is when you're a small indie, you know, if you're a small developer or whatever. If you're making, I don't know, a fantasy RPG, it's like your competition is everyone in that category. And so it's gonna be very, very hard for you to stand out. But if you're making a game about, I don't know, Cuphead is like a great example. It's like if you're making a game that pulls from like 1920s pre-Hays Code animation, like that is going to be way more interesting. And frankly, like I think, you know, obviously, you know, I think for us, you're obviously much larger outlets out there. It's like you want to get covered by NPR or the New Yorker, right? These like other like cultural publications. They're not going to do it because they care about your like crafting system, right? They're going to do it because you're connecting to some things that are outside of the world of games. This is the number one thing that we push. We have a term for it. It's called intertextuality. We teach all the writers this, which is the idea that good art speaks to other good art. And you know, it's a 60s postmodern term, but we use that, and that's like the litmus test that we use for everything. Does this have some kind of intertextuality to it? Some way that we can tell this story so we can win on both ends. Like for people who play games, they're getting a great story or whatever it may be, or an interesting look. For people who don't play games, like let's say, I'm trying to think of like a good example. There was a game we covered, This War of Mine, which was done by some students at SCAD. It was a Kickstarter project. So if you're someone who likes games, like, yeah, this looks amazing. But if you're someone who likes good war stories, like this game is going to be accessible to you, it's going to be a good introduction to you for the world of games. So that's how we try to think about it. That's like how we think about games. Like if your game can't explicitly connect to something outside of the world of games, then we're probably not really going to be interested in it. That's kind of like our purview. Every site's different, but that's how we try to frame things.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to know your outlet. Know who you're pitching. Follow them on Twitter. Don't stalk them on Twitter, but you know, pay attention to what they're interested in, and try to make a connection when you're sending out an email into the dark. You know, these are things that, like, if you do make the effort to make something a little more personal, people are going to pay attention. And I know it's a lot more work, but your investment will pay off tenfold.
I'm sort of the opposite, Mike, because like you said, we get a bazillion emails. I try to read them all. I try to respond to them all. I just want you to cut to the chase. I want you to say, hi, Brian, I read this thing that you read. I don't care. Just tell me what game you made and what it is that, you know, what it does, what it looks like, and I will be nice when I get back to you, but it's, you know, it saves me 2 seconds, 1 second.
I guess to clarify, I mean, be personal, be like, I saw you like this, here's why you like this.
Right.
Not just like, hello person, this is press release.
That's the best. Don't send dear XXX. I really liked your XXX. That's my favorite. Yeah. And they forget to fill in the X's.
Okay.
It's the best.
All right, we're going to take some questions from Twitter. This one's from @DustyCartridge1, which is a really cool handle. If you could be the guest editor of an issue of Nintendo Power in the 80s or 90s, what would your issue be about?
Blood minerals. No, I'm kidding.
It would be about how Sega's going to be out of the console business in like 10, 15 years. Don't ask me how I know.
The Wii U, are you kidding me? Talk about blowing minds.
It's burned.
I would do a Virtual Boy issue, but it would be inside Virtual Boy, and no one would read it.
Why virtual reality is the future.
Trust me, guys. Trust me.
I would do, I don't know, I would want to know the whole like hacked game genie, like the way people traded codes back in the day, kind of like the, you know, the pre-internet, like hacking your games kind of thing.
Actually, can I re-answer my question? Actually, okay, so there's this show. So I started reading Ed Catmull's Creativity Inc., which he's the president of Pixar, and he talks about when he was a kid, he was really influenced by Walt Disney, obviously. But there used to be this show, and I remember this as a kid. It was called like The Wonderful World of Disney, and every week Walt would like host this show. He would host a show, and they would like profile different people who were doing different things inside. So it'd be like the Imagineering department, or it would look at like different animation techniques and stuff like that. I think that is one of the I think, and this is crazy about Nintendo. Nintendo is like our generation's Disney, right? And we have no idea how that company works. Like really, it's a big white box that pumps out games. They're sometimes okay, they're never terrible, but they're always, and sometimes they're transcendent. So if I was Nintendo Power, I don't know. I don't think Nintendo's done it. It's over 100-year-old company, and I don't feel like anybody really understands it. So I would want to do something like that, where you would like sort of highlight these. The closest I guess is like the Iwata Asks stuff. That's like the closest we get. Yeah, and that's whatever.
Yeah, I know.
This
So
one's
you would want Nintendo to help us, please understand.
I think it's sad. I think it's sad that all these people who worked at Nintendo are going to like. There's so much accreted knowledge in that company, and it's all just going to disappear when these guys die, and it'll just be gone. Like that's it. And like we still don't really understand how Nintendo works. Like.
Yeah, can we talk about their history of owning love hotels?
Yeah.
That's the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
All right, this one's from Kurt. That's 3 R's in there. How do you balance articles that garner views with articles that aren't popular but interesting to the writer?
Like, people think like a site like Kotaku is all about clicks and views, and we get accused of running clickbait all the time, but like, the main rule at Kotaku is like, if you think something is cool, run it. Like, I ran something last week about Batman fighting Darth Vader. I'm sorry, I'm a nerd. I grew up reading comic books and seeing science fiction movies, like, if you want to be a super puritanical judge, it's not even about video games, but like, that was something that was funny and interesting and cool to me. And I ran it, and it did well. I didn't even expect it to do well, but like it did, great. Then I write something about NYU's incubator program for their first class of graduating students, and like, that was a real labor of love, and I spent weeks playing games, interviewing people, transcribing stuff, and like it does terribly in terms of like views. But like I'm super proud of that piece. Like these are graduating game makers who are like don't even have their feet in the waters of the industry yet. They haven't even dipped a toe, and like they can say somebody about Kotaku thought my game was writing about. Like this, he saw something special in it, and like knowing that you can be part of an experience like that for them. And these are good games too. Like I wouldn't have written about them just because they were there. And full disclosure, I'm a member of the advisory board for the incubator. But like, to me, that's just another way of doing what I already do, which is telling people about video games that are cool and I think are worth noting, or worth being aware of. Like, the idea that doing a popular, well-trafficced article and a quote-unquote labor of love article that's mutually exclusive is, not the case at all. It's this, I think, apples and oranges kind of metric that doesn't necessarily fit within the day-to-day reality of like writing about video games on a 24-hour cycle.
I think that the short answer is you don't. But that said, depending, it sounds like an easy question. It's actually a very complicated question. A lot of it goes to the root of what the website wants to do. Mm-hmm. Do you want to be a paper of record? Do you want to be a sort of website or publication that covers everything so that anybody who's interested in gaming can go to that site and knows that they don't ever have to leave if that's what they, if they're interested in gaming? Or do you want to be a website that is, covering the culture or just covering, the development side? I think if you're a site that's trying to sort of do a cross-section, which a lot of sites do, there will be stories that have to be written that maybe people don't want to write. And that could be, oddly enough, like I personally don't get that much enjoyment out of writing stories about new games being announced. I don't care. Like I am more into, these sort of impactful things. I'll write them, not because I'm, rubbing my hands together thinking how much traffic I'm gonna get. It's because I figure the people who read the site, visit the site, probably wanna know, and that's something that we're paid to do, to inform our readership. So yeah, it really depends on the sort of site and what the goals of the site are, I think.
Yeah, we don't either, but for different reasons. I mean, a lot of this comes down to business model stuff. Like, our model is not page views. I mean, our model is we run conference and we do conferences for other people, and we've done editorial production work. I mean, there's all these other, like Killscreen as a company. We're super small, super young as well, but our model is not built around clicks. It's nice when we have something like jump off, but like that's not a requirement for us. And the strategic reason why, I mean, a lot of this has to do with the fact that we're pretty young, and so there are other websites that had a much, Brian, when you were starting Kotaku way back when, there was just fewer things on the internet.
Dinosaurs. That's all we had to cover.
Yeah, it's just dinosaurs. Yeah. There were just fewer. I can't remember what the number is, but it's like half of all content on the internet now has been created in the last 2 years, right? And so, the big reason is because there are companies like Narrative Science. Do you guys know what Narrative Science is? Ever heard of this company before? You guys should know this company. So this company, they actually do a lot of fantasy sports stuff. So it's run out of Chicago. It's like a journalist and a computer programmer, and they basically have this like language producing algorithm that like basically just churns out stories for no one and everyone at the same time. And all that's going to happen is, for page view driven sites, is that there are going to be algorithms that just produce, so when there's a new game, or so-and-so tweets that they're releasing a new game, there's going to be some bot that will pick that up, produce a new story, and then push it out, but for everything, all the time. What's up? Throw some cat pictures in there. They're like single, yeah, exactly. So it's going to be like BuzzFeed versus Google and some like crazy arms race of the future, just like producing things that nobody reads. I know, very exciting. But for us, it's much more interesting, I think, to carve out business models that kind of cultivate the sorts of things that we're interested in. But we're just, frankly, too small to really. I mean, it would just take us too long, I think, to get to a place where producing page view stuff would actually be meaningful.
I think obviously my perspective is going to be a little different because Mashable is, a website where page views, I mean, there's not like a big billboard with anyone's names or anything like that, but
It needs to happen.
It is
Sorry.
happening somewhere where I might work.
But there, we get a daily email of the rundown of everyone's daily like page view ranking, and it's not, nobody's ever judged by this. I've never gotten a note that's like your page views are too low. But we're still paying attention to that. You can't not. So, and because I'm the only games writer, I have a couple freelancers, that's it. I do have to pick and choose. And so my kind of rule is like, okay, I've gotten some shorter stories out that I think will do well, so I can spend time focusing on the things that I really want to write. I agree with Brian, new game trailers are they're just kind of like automatically things that are just easy to do and not amazing, but they do well enough where it's like, okay, I've done this work. This shouldn't take me long. Now I can focus on the stuff that I really find interesting and I'm really passionate about.
And like we're all hitting the same beats, but like the other side is valid too, which is like, somebody wants to see that new Batman trailer.
Right.
We shouldn't necessarily dismiss it out of hand because it is a prepackaged piece of marketing, Like, there are communities of people who have real excitement about this stuff, and we should not, like, let them fall by the wayside just because, it's on a calendar in some marketing executive's office somewhere to push this out at this time. Like, but again, our cardinal rule is, like, if you feel like it's cool, then run it, The other thing for us is the shift that's happening at Kotaku, and Stephen Couture, my boss, has outlined this, is like we're moving more towards looking at the post-release existence of games, and focusing on what players do inside those games. So like, it's an interesting kind of paradigm if you're a game maker, because if you build the kind of game where people can do interesting things, then yeah, people are going to pay attention, and some of those people will be journalists who will write articles, and more people will pay attention, and then you can make another game. Cycle continues.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, it's interesting that whenever people accuse a site of
Click
writing
on.
stories, yeah, for clicks, it's like, you realize a click is somebody reading the story because they want to read the story. You shouldn't be data driven, but it's absurd to run any publication today and not look at data and see what your readers find interesting. That doesn't mean, going back to what I said earlier, that you want to only satisfy your readers with what they say they want.